last minute.
All right, should we start?
So,
All right, we have a new microphone system, so hopefully I can hear that you can hear me. This is unbelievable, board members. Wait till you do it. Good morning and welcome to today's first meeting of the new school year of the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. I'm going to welcome Commissioner Martinez. We're so excited to have you here, and I know we're going to be talking about that. I just couldn't start off without that. And our new board members, Kristen Smitty, Isabella Chamberlain. I think that's it for now. Okay. And as is our custom, we're going to go around the table, introduce ourselves, and get on with public comment, starting with Mary Ann.
Good morning, Mary Ann Stewart, Lexington.
Good morning, Dolly DeHasha, Worcester.
Good morning, Christina Grant, Cambridge. Erica Fisher, Worcester.
Matt Hills from Newton.
Catherine Craven, Brookline.
Pedro Martinez, Commissioner.
Pat Tutwiler, Secretary.
Marty West from Newton.
Isabella Chamberlain from Hudson.
Kristen Smitty, Westfield.
Thank you. And I'll start the public comment period. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the board, and you'll hear a warning bell at 2 minutes, 30 seconds, and then a second bell at 3 minutes when you need to conclude your remarks. For our new board members, a reminder that the board does not engage in dialogue or debate with public comment speakers. Our first speaker is Deb McCarthy, Vice President of the Mass Teachers Association, and Max Page, President of the Massachusetts Teachers Association. Oh yeah, and I also want to make sure everyone knows that we are recording this meeting, and it's being live streamed. Thank you.
I'm assuming it's on? No?
Yep, it's on there.
Okay, great. Good morning. I would first like to take this opportunity to thank Secretary Tutwiler for joining us at the MTA for a conversation with our Safe Schools Task Force and to listen to the grave concerns that our members have around physical, social, and emotional well-being for our students, educators, and staff. These are unique times in our public schools, and we are experiencing the weight of many external influences and factors as we face paramount concerns around our schools being safe spaces for all who enter them. As I shared with the Secretary several weeks ago, every day we have a member who is hurt on the job site. Some of these injuries are severe, and we even have districts that are purchasing Kevlar vests for those educators on the front line. I have personally spoken to education workers who have been concussed several times during the school year, experienced broken bones, blunt trauma wounds to the head, and even one who had a hairline fracture to her pelvis. At this meeting, several task force members shared with the Secretary that a month into this school year, they are already seeing staff who have quit and they are unable to provide the necessary staffing for physical safety in the buildings. We look forward to a continuation of these conversations, and I want to thank you. The other item that I would like to address this morning is how not to use the MCAS data. Many times while campaigning for question 2 last year, I spoke about my firsthand experience with MCAS data during my 25 years as an educator in the public school system. I wholeheartedly believe that data drives best practices, but I also believe that the data needs to be used effectively. Several times I was chastised by more than a few folks who claimed that classroom educators would receive the MCAS before the end of the school year. As today's meeting makes evidently clear, that is not the case. As a classroom educator, getting the MCAS results in the fall from a test that my students took in March had no value when designing effective intervention or lesson plan design. My experience with MCAS data was that it was only effective for maintaining a rank and sort system that simply reinforced the haves and the have-nots. It was never effectively used as an audit system for educational equity and justice. I'm thrilled that we are not holding the students accountable for this inequity, but I am asking that we use this data for what it was meant to do and to be used so we can provide the educational opportunities that all learners deserve, regardless of their zip code. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Max Page. I'm president of the Massachusetts Teachers Association, and we're proud in a few months, in November 24th, to be celebrating our 180th year. And I think we've been promoting and defending public education for that entire time. And I think, as we probably all know, this is more important than ever right now, and we're going to be glad to be as powerful a force as ever. I just wanted to say three things. First, I especially wanted, having just driven in from Western Mass, I want to welcome in the new board member and Kristen Smitty. And I will say that the time I met her was at a UMass fighting for fair funding and dealing with the fiscal crisis in our public schools when she was superintendent nearby in Western Mass. So I really hope that the board is fully engaged. It's a crucial, crucial issue for all of us right now and in the coming years. The second thing is I really want to call on all of you as individuals and as a board really to speak up in protection of our educators who are under attack. Deb talked about one version of that. I'm speaking specifically about the harassment, the doxing that that has been experienced all across the state in the past weeks, and it's ongoing. These are based on comments that might have been made, whether you like them or not. People have free speech, and the idea that there would be harassment publishing of people's addresses, phone numbers by activists, right-wing activists from around the country is just horrific. It not only affects those individuals, but the entire school community, and frankly has a chilling effect all across the state. So we've been standing up, locals have been standing up, but we urge you at the board to really speak out in protection of our really beloved educators who do not deserve this kind of harassment. And I know many of you feel that way, and I hope you together collectively will speak to that. Finally, I just want to raise the issue of the graduation council that the secretary and commissioner have been leading. We've been engaged with that. There's some really good discussions. I will say that it seems to be now coming to a point where recommendations are going to be made by the secretary and commissioner, and I hope those will be good. I'm very, very concerned about a tendency or a direction that could be taken, which is to try to build back another version of MCAS or another set of standardized tests, which I think the voters said is not the way to go. And let's use this moment that I believe the victory in question 2 allowed, which is to truly open up a conversation of how do we assess in a way that promotes deeper learning and more engagement among our students. So I urge you to be fully engaged in that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up, I'd like to call Karis McLaughlin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I hope everyone had a wonderful summer, and welcome. Welcome to Massachusetts. You're probably in the state that has the most resources, but we also have a lot of work that we have to do. And so I come today to talk about school accountability. I'm deeply concerned about the outcomes for kids who are marginalized, and that includes all of the regular groups and poor white children, to make sure that you know that I am being totally inclusive. And so what I can tell you, Commissioner, and none of this is directed at you because you just arrived, but in this building there is all the data that is needed to make an accurate assessment of every single school and every single school district across the state. And we need to make better use of our data. I just heard the conversation about when teachers get back the MCAS scores, and that is absolutely ridiculous that the teacher that was teaching the kids does not have that data to assess what happened, and then it's the next school year. So something needs to happen about that. There's also a practice that I'm deeply concerned about, and I don't know if that exists in the data that I looked at this morning, but the department has a practice of having statistically irrelevant children. So that's when your research numbers are low. But what I'm here to tell you is every child is important. So there can't be numbers of 6 or 10 or 20 that are not factored in when we look at student success. We have a program that's called MECO program. It's a MECO program, and what it does is it takes inner city kids and sends them to the suburbs that surround Springfield and Boston. So in that program, you're going to have those statistically irrelevant numbers. So I just want you to know that when you look at a program, if there are small pockets, and I know that you know this, I'm just putting it on the record, that if there are small pockets of kids, those outcomes are important. And I don't want to see us continue to ignore information. I always do this, and I am going to wrap up. But what I hope is that you will be given the support that you need. And I know that everyone around this table can do that. I don't have any doubts. But we need enough support so that Massachusetts is no longer saying that they're number one when they know that truly they're not. You're not number one until every student succeeds. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karis. Next up, I'd like to call Ed Lambert, Executive Director of the Mass Business Alliance for Education. Good morning.
The Mass Business Alliance for Education agrees with the Commissioner's assessment of yesterday's release of this year's MCAS scores as sobering. It's that kind of candor that we need if we're going to act with the urgency necessary to change the disappointing trajectory of student achievement in our state. While other states have shown progress and recovery from pandemic impacts, we see another year of stagnation and in some cases decline, an outcome that's unacceptable. Over the last several years, we've made a greater financial investment in our schools than almost every state, combining nearly $3 billion in federal ESSER funds with $2.12 billion of new state dollars annually as part of the Student Opportunity Act, with more to come. And yet, our outcomes are disappointing. The achievement gaps that the SOA were intended to close have actually gotten larger. And the students who rely most on public schools to get them ready for a life of opportunity in rapidly changing and challenging times have been failed. The department recently commissioned a report by an outside group to analyze the impact of the SOA. Strangely, the report makes little to no mention of student outcomes, but rather focuses on whether the money from the SOA went where it was intended to go. It fails to clarify whether funding was actually spent on evidence-based practices to close achievement gaps, as the legislation required. It's a report about inputs and outputs rather than outcomes. We can learn from the analyses conducted by others where we really stand, and the picture is not a good one for a state that prides itself on equity of opportunity. NAEP scores show that our achievement gaps are amongst the highest in the country, in many cases for certain subgroups in the top 10. We have the largest achievement gap in 4th grade math for Latino students. The numbers are just as alarming in other categories. Harvard's Tom Kane has done research that determined that our achievement gaps for low-income students widened the most amongst 15 states he studied. The 74 did an analysis that identified that in 8th grade math, Massachusetts gaps are amongst the fastest growing in the country. These are trends we must address immediately. We've been voicing our concerns for several years about implementation of the SOA. We believe state and local targets for closing gaps were never set as the law required, with the current process of embedding them inside the existing accountability system, obscuring them and diminishing the urgency for closing them. The 3-year plans required of districts to show how they will invest their new funding in evidence-based practices are seriously deficient, don't account for all of the new funding, and make clear that we have not been game-changing with our investments in the way the legislation intended. The lack of progress in closing gaps and the lack of evidence that the new funding was spent as intended leads to a reasonable conclusion that we have not realized the promise of the SOA. Sobering indeed, but as the Commissioner also said, not insurmountable. If we're to change and salvage this opportunity for students, the time to act is now. We know that our state has done many things right when it comes to educating our kids. The commitment to literacy launch and high-dosage tutoring are examples of initiatives that we applaud, which we know will have longer-term positive impacts. We also know that everyone here shares the commitment, the same commitment to addressing achievement gaps that are holding too many of our students back from enjoying those successes. We hope to work with you to make closing them another source of pride for the Commonwealth. Thank you very much for your consideration. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next up, I'd like to call Don Byers, relative to the amendments to regional school district regulations.
Good morning to the board, secretary, commissioner. Welcome to Massachusetts. My name is Dawn Byers. I am a parent of 2 graduates of Whitman-Hanson Regional High School in Whitman, which is 25 miles south of Boston. Geographically, we border Brockton, Abington, East Bridgewater. I am here to follow up on concerns I raised during last June's public comment period regarding agenda item number 4 today. Specifically, the new waiver clause. My question is, what checks and balances will be in place for this waiver? In Whitman-Hanson, students, particularly in Whitman, have already experienced a disparate impact from a lack of oversight. Massachusetts leads the nation in education, but local control in Whitman and Hanson has enabled chronic underfunding. We have remained in the bottom 10% of per pupil spending, at one point being 7th from the bottom. You talk about achievement gap, it's right here. We're at the bottom. I've tracked school and municipal funding for over a decade, including 6 years I served as a school committee member, elected official. Our community is largely unknown. However, if you understand the history of the Chapter 70 funding from 1993 in the McDuffie versus State lawsuit, you would know Whitman and Hanson families were part of that lawsuit as the plaintiffs. Annual reports in the town of Whitman document that officials in town anticipated the state aid from Chapter 70 would relieve their municipal shortfalls. So they formed a region K through 12 quickly in 1991, and when that aid did not come directly to the towns, it went to the region instead. They maneuvered in other ways that I feel undercut education. People who signed that regional agreement in 91 are still elected officials in Whitman today. It appears that leaders knew the laws, and in my view, throughout the past 3 decades, they avoided compliance while BESE may have looked the other way. The only check and balance at that time was a box checked on the end of year report that seems to have never been verified regarding the method of calculating assessments. If it had been done, BESE should have intervened when $4.5 million was diverted out of education in these towns between 2015 and 2020. So I ask you, the board, again, what kind of waiver requests are expected with this regional school regulation change? What would a town stand to gain or lose that may not have been allowed before? And are we opening the next loophole that could perpetuate inequity? I do want to point out also, Whitman and Hanson are both MBTA Community Act towns. They both have commuter rail stations, and Hanson continues to reject that and use Whitman's state aid as a revenue source. They're rejecting the housing measures intended to address statewide crisis, which causes downstream financial impact directly to children's education. I urge DESE to ensure real accountability before granting new flexibility with waivers. Without stronger checks and balances, our students will continue to bear the cost and feel the harm. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. Next, I'd like to call up Chris Fisicella, relative to Corey regulations review in the town of Foxborough.
Good morning, board. The issue is that the Foxborough Corey regulations, which I can give a copy of to you right now, who do I give the copies to? Oh, thank you. And they issue Corey checks, so they're not, and I quote, in a manner prescribed by the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. You can read their regulations. There's nothing word of that. And what they're doing is that they allow Corey checks for events like parent build events, helping out with a book fair, just volunteering at all, because these are all the emails, and they have right here that when you fill out the Corey, that they can only use it when they're entitled to do it, and they don't really have the right, if you look at the laws, to do these kind of cursory. These are just the proof that they're doing this. They don't have the right to do that, and they really need to restrain it to I forget what they say, but it has to be like unmonitored and unmonitored contact with children. I've got what the exact words are. So I'm asking you to please order the Foxborough school system to amend their core regulations to comply with Massachusetts law. I'm telling them that they're breaking the law, but they're not changing it at all. So the core applications require all the parent volunteers to divulge personal information. I believe that's why MGL Chapter 6, 172D, it makes it a crime for just requesting CORI records for trivial encounters with children, which your public CORI guidelines address. And it's an invasion of privacy, and it's exposing the school district to financial liability. So what I'm asking them to do is simple, and what I'm ask them to do is they have to open the Word file, find the CORI section, delete it, and just replace it with CMGL Chapter 71, Section 38R. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, I'd like to call Kate McDonald on requirements for student teaching.
Good morning, and thank you to the BESE board for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Kate McDonald, and I'd like to briefly introduce myself. I've been an early education teacher for 20 years, and I've earned my bachelor's degree in early education and psychology from Worcester State University in 2006. I began my master's degree in early education at Framingham State University 2 years ago. I'm certified by the EEC as both lead teacher and director 1, and I've continued to expand my knowledge through additional coursework at Mass Bay Community College at Framingham State. I've now reached the point in my graduate program where a full semester of student teaching is required. After speaking with the placement coordinator at Framingham State, I was informed that my 20 years of experience in early education would not count toward fulfilling requirement. Up until now, I've used my sick and vacation time to complete student teaching hours for previous courses. However, as a working professional in 2025, taking 16 weeks off without pay would result in a significant financial burden. It would mean losing my income, which is essential to cover our mortgage, monthly bills, and childcare. Ironically, the very childcare I need in order to complete student teaching. It would also mean losing health insurance coverage for both myself and my child. Even if I'm able to navigate this challenge, whether through a second household income, a personal loan, or support from my family, it begs a larger question. What does this requirement mean for single parents who don't have these options? What about dual income households who are living below the median income where every dollar is already stretched? This is not equitable by any standard. The current structure assumes a level of financial flexibility that many working families simply do not have. It creates a barrier to advancement for experienced educators who are already contributing meaningful to the field and disproportionately affects those from lower income backgrounds. In my personal situation, I have a licensed teacher through the state of Massachusetts serving as my executive director of my preschool, who is qualified to supervise a student teacher in a pre-K classroom. This arrangement would fill half of my practicum requirement, and I proposed a plan to complete the remaining portion of my practicum in a first or second grade classroom later in the semester in a public school. It's a feasible solution that honors both the integrity of the program and the realities of my professional life. Unfortunately, I was told this option was absolutely not possible. Yes, requirements exist for a reason, but as educators, we know that the rigid, one-size-fits-all approaches rarely serve our students well. Why should they be applied to us as professionals? Just as we differentiate instruction and meet students where they are, our system should be flexible enough to recognize the diverse experience and circumstances of the educators they serve. We are not all the same. We shouldn't be treated as such. If we truly believe in individualized learning and equitable access, then our teacher preparation programs must reflect those values, not just in pedagogy, but in policy. I'm deeply committed to advancing my education and continuing to grow as an educator, but the current structure of this requirement places an enormous strain on working professionals like myself. You guys have an untapped resource of early education teachers that would make the jump if it was possible. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you for coming in, too. Next up, I'd like to call Vatsidi Zivangsai, Executive Director of the Massachusetts Education Justice Alliance.
Good morning. My name is Vatsidi Zivangsai. I'm a parent of 2 curious children, including a 5th grader that's in public schools. I also have the privilege of working to strengthen our public schools as the director of MASIA, the Massachusetts Education Justice Alliance. We're a statewide coalition of students, parents, educators, school staff, and concerned community members who stand united in support of our public schools. Thanks to the Student Opportunity Act, also known as the SOA, Massachusetts has made real progress towards a more equitable school funding. But as we near the end of the 6th year of the Student Opportunity Act's implementation, the future of our public schools remains uncertain. Since the SOA passed, So much has changed. COVID deeply affected our education system in ways in which we're still struggling to recover from. Our students need more support than we could have ever predicted in 2019. And since then, local school costs have risen much faster than expected. The cost of special education and transportation has outpaced expectations. Inflation outpaced Chapter 70 funding in FY '23 and '24, creating a $465 million structural shortfall. As a result, we see districts across the state being forced to make these painful cuts. We're seeing essential programs like AP, arts, and music being cut, and students are paying the price. This year, BESE has an opportunity to conduct a study of the Chapter 70 formula to examine the adequacy and equitability of the fund and to look at the local contribution. Students and families across Massachusetts need this to work, to be fully supported, and we need it to be based not just on an analysis of staff and consultants, but through deeper community engagement with parents and students and educators, and one that has robust public outreach efforts. I have here with me, thank goodness for all of our parents and students who helped, but we have over 200 postcards here with me today and more coming to you. They wrote a welcome and also to Commissioner Martinez to fully fund our public schools. And they also are addressing Chapter 70 inflation fix along with removing pizza. I don't understand, but okay. Removing pizza, looking at bathrooms, etc. Also requesting the ending of the state takeover, failed approach, and looking at community schools. So we have an obligation here in Massachusetts to support all of our students, no matter the challenges we face with them, inside and outside of the classroom. Revisiting this Chapter 70 formula is critical and essential to the well-being of our students, our communities, and fulfilling the promise of the Student Opportunity Act. And we are very eager and look forward to working with you all in ensuring that our schools are serving all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. Next up, I'd like to call Tyrone Mowat, Managing Director of Ed Inquiry.
Good morning, Chair Craven, Vice Chair Hill, Secretary Tutwiler, Commissioner Martinez, and members of the board. We gathered today at an inflection point for Massachusetts. In the coming weeks, MCAS reports will arrive in homes across the Commonwealth. Parents will open these reports expecting transparency about the academic progress of their children. Too many parents have grown accustomed to being told their children simply do not meet expectations year after year. But these same MCAS reports may be more indicative of BESE's progress and the accountability system the Commonwealth uses to gauge institutional outcomes. Massachusetts takes great pride in ranking first in the nation for public education and outcomes, but we stand at the precipice of an AI revolution that will fundamentally reshape our economy. Industry leaders warn that within the next few years, if not months, artificial intelligence will eliminate more than 50% of white-collar jobs. Our new college graduates are already feeling the impact of the AI wave. These students were prepared in our schools for yesterday's accommodating world, but many must repay their student loans with tomorrow's more competitive dollars. This technological wave, this tsunami of change, will impact students from Newton to Springfield, from Brookline to Brockton, from Lexington to Lawrence, from Andover to Haverhill, and every town and city in this state. The question I pose to the board is stark. Will the work you do this term under the leadership of Chair Craven provide Massachusetts with the global workforce it needs to succeed in 10 years? Will future innovators, technologists, doctors, scientists, and leaders come from every town and city? Will Massachusetts children be the architects and builders of this new global economy, or will they be its casualties? For Massachusetts to compete, not just with other states, but with Hong Kong, Shanghai, Singapore, Seoul, Dubai, and Moscow, we must get public education right. K-12 education is the foundation of our Commonwealth's economic future. Let's be clear about where we started and where we've arrived. In 2019, Only 49% of students were proficient in math statewide. That should have been a crisis moment when half of our students couldn't meet grade level expectations. But look at the reality for our most vulnerable students in math back in 2019. Black students, only 28% proficient. Hispanic students, 29% proficient. Low-income students, which includes students from rural white communities throughout the state, 29% proficient. Female students, 49% proficient, at least at state level. Board Member West, you were right in October 2022 of asking why build into our accountability system recovery to the 2019 level. These numbers represented systemic failure for over 70% of Black and Hispanic students, yet the accountability team insisted on ambitious but achievable targets to return to these already failing baselines. Here's what ambitious but achievable delivered in 2025 in math. Our overall math proficiency rate dropped from 49% to just 41%. We've spent 4 years stuck at essentially the same level, hovering between 39% and 41% since 2022. This means that 6 out of every 10 Massachusetts students cannot do math at grade level. 4 years of recovery and we haven't budged. But the real tragedy is what happened to our vulnerable populations in math as we look at 2025 results compared to 2019. Black students went from 28% to 22% proficient, a 6-point drop. Hispanic students went from 29% to 20% proficient, a devastating 9-point decline. Low-income students went from 29% to 21% proficient. And listen to this, female students in the Commonwealth plummeted from 49% proficient to 39% proficient, a 10-point drop since 2019. Think about what these percentages mean in human terms. In a math classroom of 20 Hispanic students, only 4 are proficient after a year in school. Yet our accountability system has redefined success so thoroughly that a school with 75% of students failing is considered on track, as long as in the prior year, 76% were failing. Board Member West, you correctly identified that there was nothing magical about where we were in 2019. You and Board Member Canavan at that time warned that the tiered recovery approach proposed would create parallel tracks of low expectations. Your concerns were right on target. The accountability framework, what they call ambitious but achievable, has institutionalized mediocrity. They argued against overly ambitious targets that might demoralize educators. Instead, we demoralize children while giving parents no real understanding of how to provide what every parent wants, a decent education so their children can prosper in an unpredictable world. Board Member Stewart, what must it be like when hardworking mothers and fathers send their children off to the neighborhood schools and the following year receive those MCAS reports telling them that their precious children are not meeting expectations? The cruel irony
Hi, thank you. I'm Jerry Morose. Welcome, Commissioner. Unfortunately, there's no time to lose. You know, you have to hit the ground running. We have to make major changes in the status quo in the state. As Mr. Moet just said, and as other speakers said before, The system is broken, right? 2019 was a time when we were feeling a crisis before the crisis of the pandemic. And looking back to 2019 is not a solution for anybody or anything. You know, we have to look at the institutional players in the system and how everybody does the things that perpetuate what benefits them in the system rather than what benefits the students. The accountability system, as Tyrone says, is completely flawed, right? We say people are doing wonderfully well when they aren't. Even the narratives that come out of the Secretariat is flawed. To pretend that because 63 districts might have improved to 2019 levels, that gives us some great hope, that's fooling parents the same way that the MCAS scores fool parents, right? It doesn't tell people your child is failing and we aren't doing anything about it. It's telling parents, oh, they're doing okay, we'll get them on board, we'll just get them a little better next year. Reminds me of the old, No Child Left Behind. Oh, well, we're 54% now, but by next year we'll be 57%, and by 2 years we'll be 60%, and maybe by 2014 we'll be somewhere. We've heard this all before. The system is broken, it needs to change. We can't look at every student about how old they are and expect that that's what they need for instruction. We shouldn't be taking every second grader and putting them in a size 2 shoe, right? We have data, we have the MCAS data, but it's flawed. But we have great data that we can get from computer adaptive assessments. We can identify what students are ready to learn, put them with teachers who know how to instruct that content, and get them to move within their zone of proximal development. So they're challenged effectively academically, but can also develop all the non-academic competencies that have to come from this system. A competency-based progression education system is what's needed here, not an age-based progression. In the 1840s, Horace Mann used age as a proxy for learning readiness, and it was a good, crude proxy. It has no resemblance to reality today at all. I spent half my time in IEP meetings for kids in 7th grade telling a school district, no, don't teach them the 7th grade math. You're killing them. Teach them the 5th grade math that you never taught them in 5th grade or 6th grade, or in 7th grade to this point. You shouldn't have to argue, and districts think they're doing something right, that they're somehow justice warriors by teaching a kid 7th grade when the kid isn't ready for it. Every kid, whether they're gifted and talented or not, needs to be challenged in their zone of proximal development. Other states are moving, I'm just going to go for a second longer. We've been so far behind in early literacy, we're 2 decades behind what other states were doing, right? Now we're finally talking about it, but our ed prep programs still aren't doing the job. We've let them off the hook for decades on the ed prep programs, on early literacy and on gifted and talented. Other states now are doing automatic enrollment in advanced classes and for math, say in 6th grade, based on their MCAS equivalent scores. What are we doing here? We don't even have 6th grade advanced math classes. Who does that hurt the most? It hurts the kids who don't have the private privilege to go out and to go to Russian School of Math or to get some Kumon tutoring or something else. It's the kids who only get their education from within school who are held back with that regard. It's time to do something different, not sit here and act like, oh, we're this august board, we're this august system, our scores are great. Isn't Massachusetts wonderful? It was embarrassing, the charts that used to be on the wall of this building, or the other building, showing the graph of how we're at the top of the country. We're not at the top of the country for anything that our schools have been doing. It's because of what our kids have been doing and our families have been doing outside of school that gives us that thing. We see time and again that the school results don't match what the kids are capable of doing. The schools aren't developing the kids. It's time we do something different. Please don't feel at all complacent that we can just keep doing what we've always done. We need to throw away what we've always done and rethink the whole system. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. This concludes our public comment period. Just as a start, I just have a few opening comments. I'd like to welcome, I sort of started to do this already, but I'd like to officially introduce our new board members and our commissioner, whose first meeting is today with us. Isabella is a senior at Hudson High School and replaces Giannis, who was our member of the Student Advisory Council last year. We have had a great, Isabella, we've had a great relationship with the students on our board for many years here, and we're so looking forward to working with you this year. At Hudson High, Isabella is a member of the student council, the student representative to the school council, and is heavily involved in her school's Interact Club, drama program, and yearbook committee. She is passionate about student mental health, educational equity, and uplifting the collective student voice. Beyond her role on the board, Isabella volunteers weekly at her local soup kitchen and works as a private music teacher. She hopes to pursue political science on the pre-law track in college with the goal of continuing to represent and advocate for her communities. Welcome, Isabella. And would you like to say a couple of words to us? Introduce yourself, be after my soliloquy.
Thank you for your introduction. I'm really excited for this year. I know I met some of you over the summer. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to meet all of you, but I'm excited to work with all of you. Thank you.
Great. Welcome aboard. I'd also like to introduce Kristen Smitty to the board. Kristen serves as the Associate Director for Accreditation and School Improvement for the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, our accrediting group. She previously served as Superintendent of the Gateway Regional School District in Huntington, Massachusetts, and Principal of the Hampshire Regional High School in West Hampton, Mass., and began her career teaching 6th and 7th grade social studies in the Springfield Public Schools. With nearly 20 years in public education, Kristen Smitty brings a passion for instructional leadership, curriculum design, and rural advocacy. She has been an active voice in statewide policy, serving on the Legislative Committee of Mass Association of School Superintendents, the Connecticut Valley Superintendent Roundtable, and the Massachusetts Inclusive Higher Education Task Force. I'm so happy to welcome you to the board, and you want to say a couple of words.
I'm just really pleased to be here. I'm really excited to elevate the voices of students and educators, and I'm particularly interested to see how we address some of the concerns systematically.
Thank you. Welcome aboard. And finally, I will let Commissioner Martinez speak for himself, but it's been less than 90 days, I think, since you moved with your family from Chicago to Massachusetts.
Yes, Board Chair, and again, I couldn't be more excited, everybody. I know that there's a lot of challenges, but I'll tell you, I also see amazing opportunities, and I'll talk a little bit more, as the agenda goes through, Board Chair. But again, everybody, thank you, and thank you for making me feel so welcome. Again, like I said, it's been great just to travel the state, and I'll tell you, it's a beautiful state. It's a beautiful Commonwealth. So, again, more to come.
We're so excited to work with you. And one last thing on my agenda and comments. We talked a little bit this past month about 9/11 education, and Commissioner is going to address that a little bit more in his comments, but the need to always remember, things like this that have such a formative impact on so many of us that lived through it, and the realization that so many people were born or are teachers or were not even around at the time, begged the question of what we're doing to understand that students and everybody understand and memorialize what happened on that date. And I know Commissioner Martinez will talk about that, but we participated with Regina Robinson in a very moving ceremony at the State House recently on September 11th, and it was incredible to meet the families of people that were directly involved in Massachusetts. So I'm going to turn my mic over to Secretary Tutwiler.
Awesome. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am told that brevity is a virtue, but it will not be a virtue that I am embracing today. So please get comfortable. Good morning, and great to be back in session with my colleagues for this new school year, owning just one title. It was an honor to serve as the interim commissioner between March and July. But I am thrilled that Commissioner Martinez is here, and I will say with all sincerity that has been both a joy and an honor to work alongside him these past few months. I think it was Plato who said that the beginning is the most important part of the work. If that is true, I would say that Commissioner Martinez is tackling the most important part of the work with skill and passion. I want to also channel your welcome, Madam Chair, to our new board members. First to Kristen Smitty, if I can humbly say so, your reputation precedes you, having spent time. I didn't know it was social studies. I'm glad as a fellow social studies teacher. Rob in the back would agree. Social studies. Oh, the social studies folks are taking over. All right. But also a principal and a superintendent, and now your work with the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. I know that you'll bring much to our deliberations at this table. Salutations, and I look forward to working with you. And to Isabella Chamberlain, the student member who I had an opportunity to connect with over the civic life, no matter where they live or go to school. We've had a number of conversations at this body around transforming early literacy instruction in Massachusetts. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education took 3 significant steps toward that end this summer. First, hosting the first Literacy Launch Institute. This was a 4-day deep professional development for pre-K to grade 3 educators. This was a first come, first serve offering. And I will say that all 600 seats were spoken for. This is our first of a multi-year effort to provide deep professional learning for educators on evidence-based strategies. I would extend my kudos to Erin Hashimoto-Martel, as well as Catherine Targa, who I believe is seated in the back, for their extraordinary work in standing this up. This summer, we also announced the awarding of opportunities for high-dosage tutoring and early literacy. We're pleased to share that 272 elementary schools will be providing services to reach nearly 10,000 students. The work is beginning or already underway in a number of schools, and I want to thank the legislature publicly for supporting the $25 million proposal, as we will believe this will have direct and immediate impact. And finally, we were thrilled to be in Northampton in mid-August to announce the awarding of PRISM 2 grants. Remember, PRISM stands for Partnership for Reading Success in Massachusetts. This is a 9.3, little typo here, it says trillion, but I think it means million.
We wish.
Dollar,
It's a budget request.
million, to be clear, investment supporting 29 districts in purchasing high-quality instructional materials. Lastly, moving from early literacy to reimagining high school, I want to appreciate this board for all its work last year and appreciate the legislature for its support of the $100 million effort to expand capacity in career tech ed schools across the Commonwealth. By way of brief reminder, $60 million will go directly to career tech ed schools to expand capacity in their shops, which allows them to add more seats. $20 million will go to comprehensive high schools to add Chapter 74 programs, new ones or expand existing ones. And then an additional $20 million will go to modernization of existing lab spaces or shop spaces. We've already released the requests for proposals for CTE shop expansion, and we look forward to celebrating the awardees toward the end of the calendar year. And forgive me, I welcomed the 2 new board members, but I also want to thank Member West for his continued service in this role, officially being extended as a board member here. Incredible contributions last year. Your leadership, your contributions to this board are welcomed and appreciated. So congratulations to you as well. Turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I'll turn it over to the Commissioner.
First of all, I echo the Secretary's warm welcome to our 2 new board members, Isabella and I want to call you Superintendent Smitty, but Member Smitty. So excited to work with both of you this year. Isabella has a great passion for student voice, and we're going to partner on that. And of course, Superintendent Smitty, your perspective on rural communities and Western Mass is just so invaluable because all districts need to be seen. So everybody, in July, I arrived hitting at a fast pace. I always joke that I wish my mother as a baby would have thrown me in the deep end of the pool because I would have been a better swimmer, because your reflexes come in. I honestly believe there's no other way to do these roles than to go to the deep end, and then let your instincts kick in. So I've been running at a fast pace, meeting with DESE staff, superintendent during their Summer Leadership Institute. By the way, first time on the Cape, my God, breathless. I mean, just to be 2 hours away from that. Connecting with legislators, charter leaders of color, and individual stakeholders eager to learn and to welcome me. They welcomed me in the work. I jumped to join Secretary Tutwiler as a co-chair of the statewide grad council and met many dedicated council members. And again, thank you to everybody who serves on that council. So many hours, so many conversations. And, we spent, the first few months getting to our amazing event for releasing our vision of a graduate. More on that soon. And even though school was not in session, I connected with our different programs, including our Summer Eats program, which, by the way, 1 of 10 states in the country who actually supports nutrition. I mean, not enough is said about that. Especially everybody in today's world where nutrition programs are being cut across the country. And you have this terrible conundrum that as more cuts are happening, the quality of the food goes down. Guess what? Our children eat less. And then guess what? There's less revenue, right? So this conundrum that never gets stuck. And here in Massachusetts, we do the opposite. We actually invest. Guess what? Natural, we engage our farmers, we engage all of our local vendors. More of our children participate, and guess what? More revenue comes in, right? So again, I just got to do that call out. Visiting our aspiring principal fellows, and also attending ribbon cuttings and our statewide literacy launch sessions, as the secretary said, that were, again, everybody, as soon as we opened up the institutes, immediately they were filled. And again, thank you to our amazing literacy team, small team, but a mighty team that was able to put this together. I've also been, been very fortunate to meet with our board members, one-on-one coffees, meals. Thank you for being so gracious. Thank you for just helping me understand your history and your commitment to the agency. And also, again, just meeting all the amazing agency staff. A few highlights, everybody, just, I loved, so when I was, as we're approaching the many first days of school, because our districts start at different times, some right before Labor Day, some right after Labor Day. I was telling my team, I said, I've been doing this work for more than 22 years, and the first day of school, everybody's a big deal for a superintendent. I mean, it is like you're planning for it all summer, and I had to tell my team, I need to get out there because I don't know what else to do. I mean, I've been doing this has been my life for 22 years. So everybody, just to get out across our Commonwealth, welcome so many of our children, so many of our parents. I'll tell you, I always said this, as excited as the children were, nobody was more excited than the parents, including my wife and I when our children started school. But so much energy, and then just a few examples of the things that we saw. So for example, at Attleboro, we had this amazing, session around restorative justice, board members, where, the carpentry department actually really built the furniture for a mock courtroom, where not only the children that do pre-law, but also restorative justice happens there, and it's all by their peers. It's all the students. And so again, I haven't seen that before in my career, but just just how students came together, not only in the construction of the courtroom, but also like the actual activities that were happening there. Also was able to visit our Pappas Rehabilitation Hospital in Canton, which everybody, again, I would welcome everybody to go see. These are staff that have dedicated their life to, I would say, to serve children that are really, truly the furthest from opportunity, children that are hospitalized, that have to be there. And again, it is through our staff that they get that, that education. As well as I was able to visit, and I visited many schools, one of them including was one of our charter schools, the Pacific Rim Charter Public Schools. So there with Executive Director Graham, and able to just talk to students and really talked about their aspirations. And this is in the Boston area, again, many of them first generation students. So again, just very, very touching. Let me talk a little bit about our vision for a grad release. So the Secretary, just mentioned, at a high level. So we were at Attleboro High School. Again, phenomenal high school. I mean, very diverse. Again, wonderful culture. And really, what we talked about was our competencies for a graduate being academically prepared. Let me repeat that: academically prepared, creative problem solvers, effective communicators, self-aware navigators, intentional collaborators, and responsible decision makers. These competencies, by the way, are not add-ons to our educational approach. They're already embedded in our best practices. And as I visit classrooms, I will tell you, our teachers, as they talk about their practices, they're also talking about developing leaders in our children. And as a parent, we all care about our children being academically ready, but also integrated with that. And it is integrated about also these wonderful qualities so that they are self-aware, that they can self-advocate, and they truly are leaders. So again, just, as I visit more and more schools, I mean, that's, it's just something that I know that I'm going to continue to be inspired by. We will continue, the council will continue to meet, and we are going to be, coming back with, some more recommendations. So please, more to come on that. Let me just talk about a couple other just topics that also happened during the summer. So we had the Anti-Semitism Commission that concluded their work, and we as an agency supported the recommendations and actually voted, in favor. And so we've also issued that report. It's now a public report. We've sent it out to all of our different stakeholders. And just the commitment that I make to the board and to the community is that we will have a dedicated resource to ensure that works with LEAs and our school districts and charter organizations to making sure that, again, we really do promote anti-hate and we really make sure that our students all feel supported, as well as making sure that our teachers always have access to the best materials. We are be going out with a rubric pretty soon that will give guidance for teachers around those materials. We also are meeting with multiple stakeholders, board members throughout the month of October, because you can imagine this is an area, especially right now, that's very relevant across the country. So again, more to come on that as well. And then finally, as the board chair talked about, wonderful 9/11 event where we honored, and I think people forget that Massachusetts played such a big role in 9/11 in terms of the number of people that were affected. So to be, just to clarify, 9/11 is required. Discussion and teaching 9/11 is required across our Commonwealth. It is part of our standards. It's part of the social science curriculum framework in U.S. History 2, which is the appropriate course to study. And this is where we cover U.S. history in the 20th and 21st century. It is an expectation that it is taught across all schools. It can be found under Topic 5, United States and Globalization, Standard 6. But also, and we're partnering with the organization. We're always looking for high-quality materials to recommend to our teachers, and so know that we will continue to do that, and that's something that, again, we're very proud to be partners with our districts and our teachers really to find those high-quality materials. With that, I'll turn it back to the chair.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Hills?
I just wanted to make comments about a couple of different unrelated topics, because there was no mention of the Afton report, and I wanted to just say something. I know the report was required. I was way underwhelmed reading it. I mean, my major takeaway was the districts that got a lot more money closed the spending gap with the districts that didn't get a lot more money from the Student Opportunity Act, which is a mathematically unassailable proposition. I don't know whether this is Afton. I don't know whether this is the specifications. I have certainly seen DESE work collaboratively with other people who've done reports. So I don't have any reason to think it's kind of a DESE cooperation issue. I would just say a year and a half or more ago, we got some pretty good work from Tom Kane and his group, including specific initiatives that were and weren't working well to close gaps. And the fact that goals weren't robust enough doesn't take away from the fact that we could see that there are some districts that are doing things that are working and some aren't. That's what you and the secretary had yesterday's event about. And I would just say that as you think of a next step, there are folks who, with the right specifications, with the right collaboration, whatever, seem to be able to get some pretty useful information that feed into what you and the secretary are going to work with some of the more, some of the districts that have done very well, getting back to and exceeding 2019. So I don't know what to say in terms of a follow-up report, other than that didn't really do anything, and I don't think we're, in terms of enhancing our knowledge, and it's difficult. I don't think this is an impossible task to come up with imperfect but good analysis on what seems to be working and what doesn't. That was the first comment I wanted to make. The other comment, because I don't have a better place to put it in the agenda, is, I mean, there have been some really horrific, horrible events in the country, including recently, and all of a sudden I'm seeing stuff in the news about educators being suspended, being put on leave, and I don't know what the specifics are, and I'm not particularly, I'm not particularly interested in going and looking at what happened in each district, and each district can make their own decisions. And I understand there are limits on what employees can say in public. I understand all that. What I am seeing is a change in patterns of outcomes. And when all of a sudden I'm reading about people being suspended or put on leave for what they might be saying privately, even if that's in compliance with the law, if the law is not consistently being applied, I'm wondering why this is all of a sudden happening. And I understand fear. Like, I get all that. I'm just saying, like, these are our teachers. And to suddenly read that folks are being suspended or put in leave, that's not nearly as innocuous as putting a letter in a file. That's public, whether their names are in the paper or not. There is, as far as I can tell, no role for DESE here. I'm not suggesting there should be a public role for DESE. I'm just saying it's pretty mortifying to read all of a sudden like a bunch of people, and maybe it's all horrific what was said, or maybe suddenly people are a lot more scared about what the consequences if they don't start putting people on leave, and that's not a good thing. That's just my 2 cents on the issue.
Thank you, Matt. Member Grant.
Good morning. The work of the center and Tom Kane has been referenced several times, and so, Commissioner, I'll make sure that that research is shared with you so that you can have a reference point to some of the work we've done across the decades on the issue of academic achievement in the Commonwealth. And then I just wanted to acknowledge I'm a 9/11 survivor, and so it personally means a lot that you all are not just taking the time to acknowledge the events of the day, but to make sure that it's prevalent in the curriculum and that students are aware of what took place and that we truly make a commitment to not forget what took place.
Thank you.
Can you share that research with me as well?
I will share it with the whole board.
Thank you.
I think it's actually a good idea to maybe have it come back as a board topic, given new members and Tom and John from Pepe, from Brown. Used to be frequent flyers at our board meetings. And so I think it's good for us to schedule on an October or November meeting so that everybody can get up to speed on, and it's good with the renewed data from last year, so it's even more relevant. So,
Absolutely.
thank you. So the next order of business is the minutes for the meeting from June 24th, 2025. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Any corrections or questions? Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. We don't need a roll because there's nobody participating remotely, so that's good. Straight up vote, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is our annual election of a vice chair, and I would submit that I would like to nominate, any member can nominate anybody on the board to be the vice chair of the board, but I would like to nominate Matt Hills, who has been a great vice chair of this board. His attention to detail and data has been unparalleled in his time here as a member and a vice chair of the board, and I'm proud to nominate him. And I would look for a second and ask if anybody else has a nomination.
Second.
Okay, any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of electing Matt Hills as vice chair of the Board of Education, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you. It feels really nice sitting here to hear that. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Catherine and Erica.
And moving on to the next topic, I've talked to Commissioner Martinez a lot about board committees and how to structure the board agenda so that it's actually more interactive, right, with the board members. For a long time, it's sort of been things that come up. There are certain things on a cycle, and we'll get into that. We're going to be having a board retreat at some point, so we get to know the sort of cycle and cadence of the year's meetings. But in a way of keeping things that are in the forefront of the board, I wanted to make sure that we took the regular committees, which include the Commissioner's Performance Evaluation Committee and the Budget Committee, and re-engage some of the committees. I created the Committee on Teacher Diversity back in 2019 and had appointed Amanda Fernandez, that was a member at the time, to be the chair of that. And Amanda went on and did some great work getting that put into statute at the statewide level after her service on the board had concluded. So I'm going to revive the Teacher Diversity Committee. I'm going to put the energy that we had last year in the Committee on Literacy and the Science of Reading into a standing committee of the board. And finally, a last committee, which is brand new, and I've discussed this with Commissioner Martinez, but I think is going in the direction of supporting where the commissioner is taking the organization, is an Innovation and Best Practices Committee. And I'll be talking to all of you to see your interest on serving on these committees going forward. But I do think, in particular, those of you who've been on the board understand the good work that the Diversity Committee, Teacher Diversification Committee did. Those of you who have been on the board also understand the importance of having board member engagement, and especially things like the science of reading and how that works across the Commonwealth, and what the board's role is, more importantly, in that. And that's why this year, the Innovation and Best Practices, I've heard everybody, including people that spoke today, about what it is in best practices that we tend to hold up. And in my efforts to do this sort of highlighting, I've invited districts over the years, like North Attleboro was at our June 24th meeting, because they were a great example of a district that was doing the work and doing things with DESE in partnership. And so again, there's so many negative stories that come up in board meetings. I wanted to make sure that we always have a place where we can talk about strategic innovations that are happening at the local level with state money in some cases and not in other cases. Like the North Attleboro example, the 1-8 Foundation, who's come before us and had wrapped up with a bow, including a study from, I think it was John Hopkins, or that said, not only did we test this out with districts, but it worked, and here's the proof that it worked academically for high dosage tutoring. those sorts of strategies, having those be collected so that they exist with some sort of committee structure around them for perpetuation of them in the future. Some innovations such as early college, innovations such as the Felix School, which we're going to be voting on an extension of them today. And finally, as Mr. Mowat brought up this morning, interventions that prove to be models of what works in districts. Having those sorts of things, not only at the staff level, department level, and that pop up as things are new, but understanding that we have a board committee that can continue tracking them and how things are going will give us all a sense of continuing dialogue and the stake in the outcome. And so those things we'll talk about at the October meeting. But I wanted to give you the first foray that I'll be calling on you to see what your interest is in serving on some of these. And now for the meat of the meeting, I'm going to turn this over to Commissioner Martinez to talk about the 2025 assessment and accountability results. And congratulations, Vice Chair Hills.
Thank you, Chair Craven. And so the third agenda item, everybody will be discussing the 2025 assessment and accountability results. We have Rob Curtin, our Chief Officer of Data Assessment and Accountability, that's going to be leading this discussion. But I wanted to just make a few comments. So one, first of all, as everybody knows, yesterday we did officially release our 2025 MCAS results. And I'm going to be turning this over shortly to Rob that will go through all the details. I'll just give you a quick, really high-level summary. First of all, the results are mixed, and so I want to be very clear about that. We did see improvements a little bit in ELA, but flat in math. One of the concerns that I brought up yesterday, and I'll bring up again, we have no student group across the Commonwealth that is above pre-pandemic levels. And let me be really clear, everybody. First of all, for somebody who's been doing this work for more than 20 years and dedicated my life to this, by the way, always in high poverty communities, large complex systems, and this is my fourth state, hopefully my last, but always have dedicated my life to this work. We always meet children where they're at. That's the only way you get success. And our superintendents know this, teachers know this. You always meet children where they're at. And the fact that we have no group of students, even at pre-pandemic levels, that is not the goal, but it is a foundational goal. Because you cannot build, unless you have some level of foundation. And regardless of what people's opinions are, where we were at in 2019, the fact is none of our groups are there. And so that itself has to be, and I said it yesterday, it has to be a call to action there, because that itself has to be a concern, when in many states, at least some groups started rebounding right away. I saw that in my former state of Illinois. Some states have also, hit pre-pandemic levels, at least in one subject. I saw that in Illinois in reading, including being led by my former LEA in Chicago. And so the work, we say this, it's sobering, but it is not insurmountable. It is doable. And for somebody who's dedicated his life to really understanding the practices that it takes there, I want to be really clear. It is very doable. And there are so many students that are examples, that today that are leaders that, have seen that happen. It just doesn't happen for enough of them. And so I just want to be really clear on that. So again, we'll go deep in the data, but I will tell everybody and again, I've been in the west part of the country, I've been in the southern part of the country, which is a whole different world, and of course, where I grew up in the Midwest. And here in our Commonwealth, I see advantages, I see alignment that I haven't quite seen in other parts of the country. And because of that, I am optimistic, and I see opportunity. And so look, I love our country. Look, we invite everybody to comment and share opinions, right? That's what I love about our country. But at the end, I think it's also about us coming together and really, understanding where we're at. Look, I'm fine having critical friends, but I will just tell you this, everybody, there's no shortcuts to this work. Attacking accountability systems, attacking different things, that has never done it. And I can tell you as a kid who's grown up in a system, it's always been around strong teachers, strong school leaders, best practices that are evidence-based, that are research-based. There is no shortcuts to this work. And look, the data will speak for itself, and we'll have a wonderful discussion about it, board members. But know that I see the opportunities, and I see us being able to build from here. And again, always with meeting children where they're at. Rob?
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Martinez. Good morning to you, board members. Good to be with you again. Before we dive into the results, a couple things. You've heard me say this before. I feel like I have the easy job today. Well, I guess we'll see how this goes. But generally speaking, I think I have the easy job today of presenting these results to you. But it really is the culmination of work of our tremendous staff. There's a lot of work that goes into the last couple of months, and I couldn't sit up here without them. From both on the assessment and the accountability side. Also, Mr. Secretary, your IT staff, tremendous help to us in getting us to today. So thank you very much to all of them. So a little bit different this year than in years past, where I normally am sitting up here thinking about what's happening in the back room and whether this is all going live as I'm speaking. That's what we normally do. Yesterday, actually, we released the results publicly. So it's a little bit different this year. We had a wonderful event at the Ottoson Middle School in Arlington yesterday. And that's the culmination of a lot of work that goes in, as I said, where we publicly released the state, district, school, student group levels yesterday. That, however, is preceded by a rolling release of student level results that can be used for interventions to our school districts starting on April 25th. And as we get them, as they become available, we release them to our school districts. They can use them for student level interventions and planning for this coming school year. And then we get to this point where we're publicly releasing the aggregated results. But those student level results have been in the hands of districts on a rolling basis starting back in April. That gets us to today, where, again, we released those results yesterday. I'm going to walk through them with you today. I'm happy to report we've had 113,000 page views on profiles in the last 22 hours. It's the most visited day of the year on our website. But I will go through the data in detail with you now. So as the commissioner said, when we think about grades 3 through 8, overall in grades 3 through 8, we'll look at it in a little more detail in a second, but we saw an increase of 3 percentage points in terms of the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations as compared to 2024. In math, we did not see that increase. It was almost exactly flat from the year before in 2024. Grade 10, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but we did see a significant decrease in grade 10 ELA results in 2025. We're down 6 percentage points. Math was down 3 percentage points from 2024. And there is some evidence of impact of question 2. I want to be careful about attribution, but I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. In terms of science, remember science is given at grades 5 and 8, not as opposed to ELA and math, which is given in all grades 3 through 8. Science is given in grades 5, 8, and 10. We saw no change in grade 5 and decreases in grades 8 and 10, 2 percentage points and 3 percentage points respectively. Happy to talk to you today about our first administration of the grade 8 civics test. I'm sorry, Member West isn't here. He's been asking me about these results for quite some time now. But happy to share those results with you for the first time. And then on the accountability side, we are reporting today that 55% of our schools made either what we would consider to be substantial progress towards targets or meeting or exceeding those targets in 2025. So let's dig into the results. I want to orient you to the slides. These are set up as I've set them up for you in the past, but I know we have new board members, so I want to make sure that we're all aligned on how the slides read. So you have a line for each grade and then an aggregate at the bottom for grades 3 through 8. Okay, when all the grades are put together. The next 4 columns are our MCAS achievement levels. That would be the percent of students not meeting expectations, percent partially meeting, percent meeting, and percent exceeding expectations. And then you have it combined for a percent meeting or exceeding. And that is followed by 2 change variables. One is a change from 2024, and the other is a change from 2019, as the commissioner was talking about, as just a foundational baseline goal of that's our measure, our marker for pre-pandemic levels. So you see, Please, Member Hills.
I just wanted to say one quick thing, because I really appreciate you have the right-hand column in a different color. I mean, one of the things that was refreshing about the event yesterday is, yes, there's the obligatory kind of first in the nation. There was a lot of focus from the Secretary and the Commissioner about results relative to 2019, which was not exactly an aspirational goal to begin with. So you can feel a tiny bit good compared to 2024. Constantly going back to 2019 is really helpful. And if you start breaking your data out into subgroups, it's scary what you see in there.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And let me actually remind somebody about the color coding here. Remind everybody about the color coding here. So we consider a meaningful difference to be 2 percentage points or greater. So anything that is plus or minus 2, you'll see in a color. Anything that is 0 or 1, we would not consider that to be a meaningful difference. So you're not seeing anything in terms of a color there, either plus or minus. So as you can see here on the bottom row for grades 3 through 8, this is the 3 percentage point increase that we were talking about. And what that result is 42% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations in grades 3 through 8 for ELA. Okay? And one thing that you're going to see throughout this presentation is around that number 42. There's remarkable consistency across all of our subjects. And that's not the way the tests work. We don't set them according to each other or off of each other, but you're going to see remarkable consistency in the results here that you'll see. So unfortunately, you'll see for grades 3 and 5, our results were actually flat. And much of the gain that we're seeing is a result of what happened in grades 6, 7, and 8, particularly grade 7. And if you go back to last year, you remember grade 6 was particularly strong. But all that culminated in a 3 percentage point increase in terms of grades 3 through 8. And again, if you look at the 42%, you're going to see consistency there throughout the presentation. You're also going to see consistency, unfortunately, in the left-hand column, which is the percent of students not meeting expectations. You're going to see roughly 20% of our students, depending on, in grades 3 through 8, depending on, regardless of the subject, actually, you're going to see rough consistency there. And then, as Member Hills noted, if you look to the far right, you can see the distance where we are from, how far away we are from where we were in 2019 as a pre-pandemic marker, okay? So for grade 3, for example, where we are furthest behind, at that time, 56% of our kids were meeting or exceeding expectations. I often get questions about whether that was the same test. The answer to that is yes. This version of MCAS started in 2017. So you can see variation by grades, particularly our earlier grades, though, where we're seeing double-digit deficits as it relates to 2019. As Member Hills mentioned, this is the results for the student groups. I won't go through this necessarily line by line, but you'll see that the percentage point change for each of the groups from last year is roughly the same. You're looking at 2 and 3 point changes in most cases for our racial and ethnic groups. And you can see that there is still quite a bit of a distance. As the Commissioner was saying, none of our student groups are at pre-pandemic levels, not a single one. A couple things to note here. Obviously, we always pay attention to the gaps that we have that exist between groups. And you can see here by looking at the meeting exceeding column that there are significant gaps that remain, and that's our challenge ahead. Obviously, we need to improve the performance of all of our students when we have 42% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations, but we will never take our eye off those gaps that exist and paying close attention to those. And then, unfortunately, again, if you look at the left-hand column, you'll see variation here as well, and large numbers of students. And then if you look at the bottom 3 lines, those are our English learners, our low-income students, and our students with disabilities. The Commissioner has pointed out in some of his comments about our English learners, we have only 5% proficiency. A reminder that this does not include first-year English learners. This does not include our newcomer students. They are not included in these calculations. And you can see, even pre-pandemic, our English learners were at 15% meeting or exceeding expectations, and now down to 5.
So Robin, I've said this, board members, in my career, I don't think I've ever seen proficiency levels this low for multilingual students. And I will say, as much as I've been so impressed by so many things I've seen in Massachusetts, one of the things that really saddened me was their history of multilingual students, and how it was just recently that, it wasn't that long ago that we weren't allowed to, have best practices around bilingual education and around dual language. And it is something that we're far behind the rest of the country. These practices have been proven for a long time. Chicago being one of the largest in transitional bilingual, the dual language programs that I was able to build in San Antonio, some of the best in the country. These practices have always been around. And so I just want to call that out. This is the root cause there is, what was happening legally, what we're not allowed to do versus anything else. And as Rob said, this doesn't include our first year newcomers. Remember, our multilingual students have they're for multiple years, in ESL programs or other, shelter programs, shelter SIA programs. And so this is accumulation of them all. And what, research has shown, especially for many of our multilinguals, eventually they outperform their peers if they're given the right practices. And that's always been true in every state that I've been in.
Okay, let's turn our attention to grade 10 in ELA here. And this is what I mentioned at the beginning, where we saw, if you look at that top line, I have it all on one slide here because we're only talking about one grade. But if you look at, we saw a 6 percentage point drop in our grade 10 ELA results from last year, from 2024 to 2025. And you can see, if you look at the 2019 column, you'll see that we were actually getting pretty close to pre-pandemic levels prior to 2025. We were within 4 percentage points, and I think I highlighted that for you a year ago at this time. And you can see all throughout the student groups, we saw significant drops. So what this has resulted in is basically 50% of our kids meeting or exceeding expectations on the grade 10 ELA test. And I want to be careful here about attribution. I'm not suggesting that it's possible to attribute the results to any one factor at all. And certainly, as we saw this group of 10th graders coming through 8th grade, they had decreased performance in 8th grade as well. But we do have some evidence of impact as it relates to the outcome of question 2 in November. And it's hard to tell how much of an impact, but when we look at the motivation of students to do well on the test, and one way to look at that is the number of blanks on the test, so in other words, of questions they're just skipping, or we look at what we call off-topic responses. So in the essays, that's where students might tell us their feelings about MCAS or their feelings about anything other than the question that was asked for the essay. In those numbers have substantially increased in terms of blanks, and in the case of off-topic answers, on average per essay, that number tripled from 24 to 25. So it certainly leads to questions, and this is data we're going to dig into more and want to know more about, but we can certainly point to what we think is at least a somewhat of a factor in these results from 24 to the decrease from 24 to 25. Member Hills.
I just want to follow up on that because I don't want to just leave that hanging out there. Like, my impression would be, even if some of what you're saying is going on, that doesn't take away from the pretty significant reduction versus 2024, let alone 2019. So,
absolutely,
and especially when I look at grades 3 through 8, and I realize, that's not a perfect comparison.
Yeah.
So, if you want to just if there's anything you can do to say, all that being said, there is or isn't a significant impact, it would just...
Sure. Yeah, let me try to do it a little better than I did the first time. I think that watching this group of 10th graders come through since the pandemic, right? When we were in 8th grade, their performance was lower than it had been for typical 8th graders, right? And we might have expected some lower results as it would have happened, right? However, as I was mentioning, we were on the trend up, right? We were getting close to the pre-pandemic level in 2024. right? So I'm not at all suggesting, and my apologies if it came across this way, that the impact of motivation and the results of question 2 explain this entire decrease. I'm not in any way trying to say that. I think what I am saying is we do see anomalies in terms of the way the students participated in the assessment that we had not seen before to a much greater degree. So it will lead us to take a look at, and we will continue to take a look at, how students actually participated in the assessment, in addition to what they demonstrated in terms of their knowledge and skills.
But I also think, Rob, I don't want to be shy about this.
Yep.
Kids pay attention to what we focus on as adults. And so when we don't prioritize certain things, students notice. And that's just the reality. And so, they show it in different ways, and Rob just gave you some evidence. So, I don't think we should mince words. That, not having it as a graduation grade did definitely affect, proficiency results. And again, I think we need to live with that, right? Like, that's just the reality. Now, with that is I will tell you, we're going to be, yesterday we celebrated districts in grades 3 to 8 that are pre-pandemic levels. We're going to be celebrating high schools later in the year. We will be looking at a comprehensive set of measures because high school outcomes, we definitely love to look at multiple measures, right? And so, but in terms of this particular assessment, I mean, the evidence is pretty clear that, again, when we tell students that basically the message doesn't matter, you see it in the results.
Commissioner, I would love to see that actual data. So like number of students who took the assessment, number of blank answers, because right now it's very qualitative, but my level of concern would either be lessened or heightened if I actually could put numbers around. Even down to districts. Like I would love to get a sense. Like if students are writing off-topic responses, we can see the response that was written. Like I would want to see that. To better understand, and I guess also the trend analysis, like so looking at who they were in 8th grade and 9th grade, et cetera, to like see how close or far we were, as it then relates to this conversation, it'd be helpful.
Happy to provide that, Member Grant. I mean, I can tell you numbers wise, we were on average, we were around 800 or so off-topic answers per essay. And we had about 2,500 per essay this year.
Rob, can you remind us, let's just say for ease, there's 100 questions on the MCAS. How many students need to get right in order to meet or exceed expectations?
Yeah, so it's a 51-point test, and I want to be careful about the cut score and saying exactly what it is, and I should know it off the top of my head. But I can tell you that what happens, though, is on each of the essays, for example, there are 8-point essays. So if you just completely leave 2 essays blank, you're looking at 16 points right off the top of your score and not even, you're probably looking at a cut somewhere in the 30s. But I want to be, I want to be careful there and not misquote that. But happy to provide that. And frankly, that's publicly available information that I can get to.
I just want to go back to Christina's question and your answer to it, because I think this is simple math I'm doing the right way. If every single one of those students in the increase from 800 to 2,500, so that's a 1,700, if every single one of them, if you could show they were more likely to be meet or exceed and they fell below, that's 1,700 out of approximately 70,000+ test takers. So a couple of percentage point impact
for sure
is the impact, which if you just took 2 off of that, it doesn't change. It doesn't change the point you want to make with this slide.
For sure.
That's I think
that's what we want to be careful about in terms of.
Thank you for asking the question, because that's what I was trying to articulate. So thank you.
We want to be careful. This is what I mean about attribution, right? I don't want to make a blanket statement about what caused this, and but as the commissioner said, I think there certainly was an impact.
Dr. Fisher.
Oh, sorry, Member Fisher.
Okay. So I think 2 things can be true I'm going to speak my own perspective on this, and after looking at the data and after meeting and talking about the data, the 10th grade MCAS is obsolete. It's for accountability, to look at this is really problematic, to hold districts accountable using the 10th grade MCAS now, given the ballot. And then my second point is, even given that, our students are underperforming at a rate that is beyond tragic.
Yeah.
So those are my two, that's what I.
Yeah.
I mean, I just wonder what the new charge is, because this is beyond.
Well, and I will say, board members, I mean, this is where I'm excited by the work that Secretary and I are leading, because I think what you're going to find when we come back to you with what we're looking at, first of all, a comprehensive solution. And just, and I just have to say this about MCAS, because I think it bears saying. First of all, let's understand what MCAS is. The reason Massachusetts became #1 in the country was because of its high standards. That's what everybody took notice of, and aligned to, as Member West would say, very aligned to our NAEP, and the gold standard of measuring those standards have always been MCAS. Many states have always seen that and said, so it wasn't just the standards, but also the way we measured them. So one, I just want to start with that, because again, people love to attack the accountability system, but it's like, those are the facts. I'll just share with you from somebody who wasn't here in this state and was watching it all, for the last 20 years. I do think what we're doing, though, is we're taking, what happened as an opportunity, and actually to address some very, very, some real challenges that exist in our Commonwealth, specifically around kids getting access to the right course content. Because you'll hear me say this over and over again, everybody, there's nothing crueler than a student who finishes high school, who's done all the right things according to, what was expected of that student, and then they find out later that they never had even a chance because they never even got access to the opportunities that other students did. There's just nothing crueler. And I've seen this throughout my career, and something that I continue to vocalize quite a bit, because there's so many adults in our society that experience that, and is still pretty angry about it, by the way. And so we're addressing that issue. Really making sure that our students actually have the proper advisement, because there's the so what, right? So you get access to great content, so what? If you're a kid who's first generation, as it is, higher ed is so complex. And that's when you have parents that actually understand it, or at least a part of it, right? And so you're gonna see from us a very comprehensive set of solutions, as we look at that. So just know that, board members, and so I know, Secretary, more to come, right? Hopefully I didn't reveal too much.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay. So that was ELA, and I'd like to, as we go through into the next subjects, remember ELA 42% in grades 3 through 8, 50%, 51% in math, because you're going to see the consistency coming through here. So here are the results for math. And you'll see, again, overall, 41% of our students in grades 3 through 8 meeting or exceeding expectations. That number is flat from where we were in 2024. And you'll see that we're still quite a bit off from where we were in 2019. We're a little closer, but we were starting a little, the math results were a little lower back in 2019. So, and you'll notice here it's actually the reversed, where our higher numbers in terms of where we were in 2019 are actually more in the 6, 7, 8 as opposed to grades 3 and 4, which is a little bit flipped from where what we had in ELA. But again, the consistency here is that 41% of our kids meeting or exceeding expectations, 19% not meeting expectations, which again is that lowest achievement category on MCAS. But overall, pretty flat results. One measurable increase in grade 7 and sort of a commensurate decrease in grade 4. Student group, you see when you have flat results overall, generally speaking, you're going to see the flat results by student groups, and you'll see here just almost no significant or meaningful change but for any student group. A reminder that our Native Hawaiian population is quite small, so you're going to see any sort of slight change is going to cause bigger numbers there. But again, flat results. If you look here, you'll see those large achievement gaps. Our Asian students at 70%, our Hispanic Latino students at 20%, over 50%, over a 50-point gap showing there between those two groups. Particularly if you look at English learners, again, below 10% of English learners meeting or exceeding expectations on the math assessment. For grade 10, we again had a drop in the terms of the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations. It was only 3 percentage points as compared to the 6 in ELA. That puts us at 45% of students meeting or exceeding expectations. If you look at the change from 2019, this is where, again, we were almost a 60% state on the grade 10 math and the grade 10 test in math back in 2019, and now we're a 45% state. And that's the reality of where we are and the challenge of what we face moving forward. And all of these results are here for you to see in terms of the changes that we saw amongst the student groups. Vary greatly. Don't vary greatly between the various racial and ethnic groups. I would draw your attention, and we're careful when we think about our looking at achievement gaps. And the grade 10 math results are actually a good example. If you look at the white line where you saw a 5 percentage point decrease from 2024, and you compare that, for example, with the Black or African American line where you saw a 1 percentage point decrease. Technically speaking, what that means is we narrowed the achievement gaps between white and Black students, okay? But we're very careful about the way we look at this because that's not the way we want to be doing it, by having one group get more worse, is that the right way to say it, than the other group, right? We want to see forward progress and narrowing of the achievement gaps, and not the way that the achievement gap narrowed here. But again, this is something we'll continue to pay attention to in addition to the performance of all of our students. Our science results, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, and for our grades 5 and 8, just about completely flat, and there's that 42% number again. Again, that consistency across all of our subjects. In grades 3 through 8, whether that be all grades 3 through 8 or just 5 and 8 in science, we're in essence a 42% state. In terms of the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations. And you see in grade 10 that a drop that was commensurate with the math results of a 3 percentage point drop, and has us right near where we are in math at 46%. So the data are telling us exactly what the truth is here in terms of consistency across the subjects. One thing we were excited about this year, as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, was our first operational assessment for grade 8 civics. This is something that we have been building towards, whether we were piloting the results, piloting the test, then we did a full field test. But last year was our first year of operational. A reminder that this test is a little different. It contains 2 components to it. The first is an end of course test, which is like our other MCAS tests. But the second is a state-level performance task that centers on one of 7 topics that are in the standards, and that is done locally. And we provided similar local-level performance tasks for districts to be able to practice on this. But we're happy to say that the administration went well. Knocking on wood, there was almost no problems in terms of the administration for the first year of a test, which was really exciting for us. And I just want to give everybody a little insight into how we go about scoring the test when we do the first year of the test. People often ask us that. How do we come up with the scores? And we do that through a process called standard setting. And it's actually one of my favorite things to observe in this job, because the way that we do that is we get a bunch of civics teachers in a hotel room over a couple days, and we have them go through a process to figure out where those cut scores should be and what students should know. The key here is it's not something that we're doing here in Everett. We actually have educators, and this is across all of our subjects, that help us out and think about what students should know to meet each of the achievement level cuts. So we did that over 2 days in August. I was there on one of the days, and interestingly enough, here are the results that we came out with after we bring those cuts back here and put them next to the student level data. Lo and behold, 40% of our 8th graders, or 39% in this case, came out as meeting or exceeding expectations in the first administration of the civics assessment. Again, there's that consistency that you see, and you see here, this is our first time looking at this. Honestly, we're just starting to dig into the civics results a little bit. You know, because we had to do the standard setting in August, we get these. These are a little bit fresher, but you see all of the student group results here, and those gaps exist like they do in other subjects, but this is something that we will continue to dig in on. I've talked to you for several years now about the impact of chronic absenteeism on our MCAS results. Unfortunately, well, fortunately, as we have noted, we did see an improvement in our chronic absenteeism results this year, small. We're talking in the range of 1 percentage point. A reminder for everybody that chronic absenteeism is defined as the percentage of students who are missing at least 10% of their days in membership. So for a typical student in a 180-day school year, that means that they're missing 18 school days in a year. So what you have here is to look at it a couple different ways, and I think it's really telling about what the impact is of being in school, and our initiative around the power of presence is coming through in these results here. So if you look at grades 3 through 8, for students that are not chronically absent, okay, those are students that miss less than 10% of their days, you'll notice that their average scaled score is 496. And a reminder to everybody that our achievement levels start at 440. The lowest goes from 440 to 470, the not meeting level. The partially meeting level goes from 470 to 500. And the meeting goes from 500 to 530, and then exceeding goes from 530 to 560. So our students that were not chronically absent, the average scaled score in grades 3 through 8 was just below the meeting or exceeding line. Okay? Now, chronic absenteeism is a binary measure, right? If you miss 19 days, you're chronically absent. If you miss 17 days, you're not chronically absent, right? So there is some caution to be taken there. But I can tell you this. The average student who was chronically absent in Massachusetts last year missed 30.3 days of school. That's the average, okay? So certainly some missed less, but certainly some missed more. Okay, so we're not talking about the margins here. We're talking about kids that are missing a tremendous amount of school. And you can see the impact here. For those students that were chronically absent, remember I just told you that those achievement levels were 30 points wide. Okay, so the impact here is that the not being chronically absent is in essence worth half of an achievement level on the MCAS, 14 points. And in grade 10, it's worth 2/3 of an achievement level. Okay? The average grade 10 student who is not chronically absent actually scores above the meeting expectations level. None of us are surprised by these results. Coming to school matters. Okay? And you can see if you look at all the different, in math, perhaps not surprisingly, the number's even bigger, right? It's actually more than half an achievement level in grade 3 through 8 that it's worth in terms of being chronically absent or not. And then on the far right, perhaps, one of the more, I think one of the toughest statistics on here is that for those students in math in grades 3 through 8 that are chronically absent, you're looking at less than 1 in 5 students meeting or exceeding expectations on the grades 3 through 8 math assessment. One of the things that Member West has talked about in relation to the NAEP results, and you've seen this on the NAEP results nationwide, is that our lowest performing students are performing at a level lower than they ever have. And this is our challenge, right? We're not going to close gaps. We're not going to improve our overall performance unless we improve the performance of our lowest performing students across the state. And we like to look at our lowest performing students in terms of the bottom quartile. So if you think about our lowest performing students across the state, the lowest performing 25% of students, okay? And when we do this, we actually control for transients, okay? So these are students in grades 4 through 8 who have been enrolled in the same school for 2 consecutive years and assessed in the same school for 2 consecutive years. So these are not students who are just showing up to a school as newcomers, okay? The average student in that group that have been in the same school and assessed in the same school for 2 consecutive years in ELA in grades 4 through 8 have an average scale score of 466, okay, which is in our lowest achievement category. They're in the not meeting expectations category, our lowest performing students, and just on average. So those students are our challenge, and we cannot move the needle in Massachusetts without improving the performance of those students. It just doesn't work any other way. I know that's the low point, if we will, of the presentation. But as I mentioned at the beginning, we had a wonderful event yesterday at the Audison Middle School in Arlington. And we were there to publicly release the MCAS results. And however, one component of that was also to celebrate some districts. And again, as the commissioner said, this is not in any way to suggest mission accomplished. We weren't saying that. However, this is a foundational goal, is to get back to where districts were in 2019. And yesterday we celebrated 63 districts that in grades 3 through 8, we were just focusing on 3 through 8 yesterday. As the commissioner said, we'll do high school at a later time. But in 63 districts that have met or exceeded their 2019 achievement levels in grades 3 through 8, okay? There are 9 districts that have done that only in ELA. There are 41 districts that have done that in math. And there are 13 districts, and you can see the 13 there that are listed out for you, that have accomplished that feat in terms of meeting or exceeding their 2019 achievement levels in ELA and math. There are 13 districts that have done that, and we recognized all 63, but particularly the 13 that did it in both, and you can see they are there listed for you. Commissioner.
Yeah, and so board members and community, you know, as we said, this is not, like the goal, right? This is about, again, I want us to ground ourselves is we got to meet people where they're at. I've been doing this work for very long, and I can tell you that's the only way you move the work forward. And so, credit to these 63 districts, charter organizations. Of course, we wanted to elevate them. Yesterday is not a one and done, and in fact, we will be elevating their practices across the Commonwealth throughout the year. I wish you would have been able. I know. Thank you, Vice Chair Hill. You were there to hear. Because we had 2 superintendents, we had a student, we had a principal from a middle school, and I can tell you, their comments. Nobody talked about test prep. Nobody talked about, we were, as the secretary and I talk about like this drill and, because we've done this for a long time, right? I've seen it firsthand where teachers will stop tier 1 instruction and go right to remediation and just, again, practice tests, right? That was not what was discussed yesterday at all. It was about elevating our children, making sure that we are truly developing their skill sets, about support systems for them, and a lot of hard work. And really trying different things. And so that's what we heard yesterday very clearly. And so this will be an elevation. The other thing we also know, and I'm going to just say a couple numbers off the top of my head, but Rob, I know you know them better. We have over 90 schools in the Commonwealth that have also reached ELA and math at pre-pandemic levels, not all represented by the 63, because remember, this is at the district level. So I want to elevate those practices because those schools are throughout the entire city, whether it's in Boston, whether it's in Western Mass, we have them everywhere. We have almost 200 schools that have done it at least in one of the two subjects. I think it was like a, so again, so just so you understand, the strategy, everybody, is that it really is to elevate practices in the classroom, to really show, because I really am convinced that the best way for us to move forward, and again, everybody, look, welcome everybody to be a critical partner. I know that's what a lot of people in the room are. Welcome. But at the end of the day, the way you move those work forward is we really have to talk about, what are the strategies and practices and how do we support them? How do we align the resources? How do we get to the real core issues? Which I will tell you again, if we have a teacher recruitment and retention issue, I don't care what strategy you have, off or not. If you have constant turnover at the school leadership level, off or not, right? So we got to get deep into what is actually happening in our schools. And I am confident, because we do have so many assets in our Commonwealth, so many assets, more than I ever had to work with in any of my districts that I led, that I do see a path forward. And again, this is not trying to be naive. This is somebody, again, who has done this for more than 20 years, who understands what it takes. I'm not alone. Right, Secretary? We have a few of us that have done this, right, Christina? We have a few of us who have done this and have walked the talk. And so, again, everybody, that's why I am optimistic that let's take a moment and say, look, this is where we're at today, and let's come together and let's move forward.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess, Commissioner, I think my only offering is like the role that we play in the alignment of mass. I share your sentiments in that this is such a resource-rich Commonwealth, that it's also the alignment of the resources to the expectations we have for our children in our district. I think that's why some of the energy is the way that it's felt, because so many other states are experiencing their recovery year, and it is eye-opening to see this data up against the level of investment that has been made over the last since 2019.
Before you move on, Rob, can I just have the forbearance of a question of how many of these districts have the curriculum that aligns with the standards that are set? And as we move forward, how much attention are we giving to that element of this?
Yeah, and so, Chair, so this was, something I asked the team. I said, look, we got to start somewhere. And so, and again, so we haven't done that deep dive. But what you have my commitment is that we're going to be elevating those practices throughout the year. And so, we'll, and I'm hoping to show videos, to show actual, testimonials from students. And so we will elevate that. And again, I'm more than happy, Board Chair, to bring, as we highlight those practices, to bring those to the board so you can see them for yourself. And again, not just the districts, but also, again, we have, over 90 schools also across the entire Commonwealth also that have also, that I think we'll be able to highlight as well. So I'll bring that back to you.
And just to put a point on the commissioner's numbers, so the ELA only in terms of schools was 157 schools. Math was 278, and both was 92 schools. And that's just 3 through 8, so you're probably talking in the 1,100 range, something like that. But it was, there were a significant number of schools that did this as well, but this is focusing on the district level.
I just wanted to make one kind of observation here for, if I look at these 13 schools, or 13 districts, 5 charter schools, 8 districts.
Yeah.
I don't know the socioeconomics of like every last one of these districts, but none of the districts are what we think of as the higher income districts. So whatever these folks are doing, I'm not saying these are all lower income, but sure, there's a mix of districts and charter schools in here. Yeah. And they are doing, they have instituted practices that have gotten them to a level that lots and lots of other districts haven't gotten to, which was what yesterday's event was about. So I didn't say anything with any particular consequence, other than these people seem to know what they're doing in these districts.
Yep.
And they're doing it with good outcomes. If you want to call getting back to 2019 good, but as a first step, as the commissioner said, it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for the board's information, Banneker's in Benjamin Banneker's in Somerville, Excel is in East Boston, Libertas is in Springfield, Pioneer is actually here in Everett. So there is representation in urban communities as well here. So I think we look at this as an opportunity to learn across a wide variety of districts in some respects, and in terms of educational models as well, that we can learn from. And as the commissioner said, how can we elevate the practices moving forward?
To call something out really quick, charter schools are just the school. They're not the full district. And so if we looked at charter schools compared to the list of schools that made that progress, I just want to say there's a difference between a district that has multiple schools versus one charter school.
Thank you. Member Harsha?
Just one comment in terms, especially in relation to chronically absent, and we keep talking about, Commissioner, you keep talking about meeting students where they at, which I totally agree, and we're talking about like the number, the average of, absence. It's just, to me, it's just very clear that we can talk about the curriculum and the level of curriculum all we want, but if we're not ensuring that those students that are absent are not being sort of expected to jump to the curriculum without like having taken the time to ensure that they get there, even in the mist that we're seeing from third grade, then we're just going to continue to be in this loop, right? And we're talking about Grant is also talking about resource aligning the needs, right? Like that is where, for me, I would like to understand more how the resources are being allocated. And we're talking about, the not only the tutoring, but the time that is going to take, because the teachers themselves, they offer to stay after school. I see this, I'm a parent of 3 public schools. And I have a child who's sick at home right now, missed 5 days, right? And he's emailing the teacher. They will offer to stay after school, but they have limitation. They say I can only stay Monday between this time, because they have their lives as well. So I just want us to be able to like talk more about these resources aligning and how we making sure, especially with chronically absent, but also the students from third grade that we're already seeing it is not on grade level. How are we ensuring that those resources are truly aligning to tutoring and everything else that's going to take to get the student, so we meet them where they at?
Yeah, no, absolutely, board member, and I can tell you again, and we heard this even yesterday as I was talking to many of our districts and charter organizations. Again, nothing happened by accident. It was a true rolling up sleeves, understanding what was happening with their families, and I'll just have to say this, everybody. Again, I started part of my career in the nonprofit world, trying to save really, really especially attacking poverty. And what I learned over time is that, especially when it comes to our students, and the research bear this out, if they have a sense of community within their school, especially if they have a sense of community in their classroom, they're gonna come to school. If they feel that they don't have that sense of community, and either they don't feel challenged, or they don't feel supported as they're being exposed to more rigor, you're going to see them disengage. And there's just that's it. And then of course, and you said this, I empathize with the parents, right? Because especially as our children get older, we know how much more difficult it is. And so to your point, board member, this is part of us. As we go deep into the practices, what heartened me yesterday and what the secretary and I and Member Hills heard yesterday, again, it was around the supports of the children. It was around, we talked about students feeling joy, feeling a sense of community. And so you almost had to close your eyes and realize, oh, these are districts. These are not like, social service organizations, but yet, and of course, within that, challenging them and making sure they're prepared academically and supported. So again, everybody, I can't wait to bring these practices out to light, because I think for those of us who've been doing the work, it won't be a surprise what it is, but I do think it'll be a surprise to many community members of what it isn't.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I won't talk again. I just, I just want to name the disconnect between like the public comment. Like parents need to know the implications of what 30 missed days of school are. And they also have to know their role and their accountability for that. There's a distinct difference between a child being sick and having 5 excused absences over 31 unexcused absences as it relates to the tremendous investment that the taxpayers of this Commonwealth make in education. Like that number 1 slot is only achieved with high standards, high expectations for what we believe all of our children can achieve, and then the relentlessness of making sure that that is being done on a day-to-day basis. And so like I love the warm and the joy, but I think if you love children, you educate them very, very well, and you hold people accountable for that education.
Not to get into the baby program, but just to reemphasize, because everybody, it's interesting in doing this work, and I use joy a lot, because I will tell you, there's nothing more joyful than when students are challenged and they're mastering concepts that they never thought they would challenge. There's nothing more joyful when they get into an early college class and they're like, never thought college was going to be for me, and all of a sudden now they're not even thinking about just that college credit, but actually, I can go get a bachelor's degree. I can go get a graduate degree. I mean, and that's what we mean by joy, everybody, is joy in terms of students feeling confident about themselves and about their future. And I will tell you, the opposite is true. When students don't feel joy, when they don't feel confident, when they feel so, just, either bored because they're not being challenged at all, or just not seen and being part of a community, it's just not joyful. And so that's what we mean, Member Grant, that, and that's what our superintendents were talking about yesterday. It's not a separation of academics. In fact, it's just the opposite. It's really, truly a deep integration of the academics.
I would say even not so much to even push it a little further. It's about student feeling seen, right? Even if you're not experiencing joy, it's about if students are feeling seen in their sadness, in their joy, in all of it. That's when the relationship starts to change with the academics. But they have to feel seen and heard.
Okay. We also released yesterday our accountability results. Won't go into great detail here, just to let you know that there are 2 components to the system. One is a normative component that looks how schools are compared to each other. Then we have a second component that looks at how schools are doing compared to their own targets, their own progress, regardless of how other schools are doing. We have that, and that is measured through multiple measures. You'll see that some that are listed there. And ultimately, we end up with 2 things. One, which is very simple: does a school require assistance or intervention or not? Is one of the classifications the top level classification that we have. Does a school require assistance or intervention? And then below that, we then talk about how schools are doing relative to making their targets and progress towards those targets that they have. And it's important to note that we are not talking today about individual school decisions. Okay, we will bring that back to the board at a later date, perhaps next month, as early as next month. But we are not talking about individual school decisions right now. Because the reason I bring that up is when we talk about getting that requiring assistance or intervention classification, there's 6 different ways that a school can get that. And the top 2 are by being formally identified as either a chronically underperforming or an underperforming school. And the third way is schools that are in the lowest performing 10% of schools in the state are automatically classified as requiring assistance or intervention. Any school with a graduation rate lower than 66.7 is classified as requiring assistance or intervention. If you have a very low performing student group, or if you're not meeting the federal or state participation requirements. So when we use all of that information together, there were 1,817 schools in the Commonwealth in the 24-25 school year. 227 of them we could not make a determination on, either because they were too small, they're PK to 2 schools, they don't have tested grades, for example. So that left us with almost 1,600 schools. And 82% of schools in the data we released yesterday were classified as not requiring assistance or intervention. And that left 18% that were. 280 schools were classified as requiring assistance or intervention in the data that we released yesterday. So then that's the top level message. Does the school require assistance or intervention? Right below that is, how are they doing in meeting their progress towards their targets? As I mentioned at the outset, we reported yesterday that 55% of schools in Massachusetts fell into our top two categories. Those are two on the far right that you see, substantial progress towards targets or meeting or exceeding their targets. That number was 60% last year, and much of that decrease can be attributed to our high school results. If you look at the high school line, you'll see the number is much lower than it was last year. But again, 55% of schools in our top two categories related to how they're doing in progress towards their own targets, not related to other schools, individualized targets based on where they're starting from. Also yesterday, one of the highlights of the accountability system is our School of Recognition program. We identified 61 schools of recognition yesterday for either high achievement, growth, or meeting or exceeding targets. We included in here 6 National Blue Ribbon School nominees. You might have heard that the U.S. Department of Education has decided to cancel the National Blue Ribbon School program. But we felt it was critical that since we had already nominated these schools, to include them in our recognition program. So we did do that. So 61 total noted on our website on their accountability reports, and we will continue to highlight their successes moving forward. And with that, I thank you very much for the time and the thoughtful questions. Happy to answer anything else that you might be interested in.
I have a question in terms of the insufficient data that
Sure.
you mentioned, and also with the low income for grades 10, I think more, not just grades 10, 3 to 8 and so forth. It says unavailable for data for 2019.
Yeah.
What is the correlation between?
Yeah. So my apologies. That's something I should have mentioned. So if you look, for example, here at the low income line, Member Hasha, thank you very much. I should have mentioned this. You'll see that the NA under 2019 for low income, that signifies we were tracking low income. It was just under a different definition at the time. We've since made changes to our low-income definition, considering different programs that students are enrolled in. So that NA is just to say that there shouldn't be a comparison made between the low-income results in 25 with the low-income results in 2019 because they were two different groups of two definitional challenge. As it relates to the PK2 schools, as we're thinking about improvements to our accountability system, one of the things we want to be able to do is come up with a accountability designation for all of our schools. But right now, we don't have that, given that we don't have assessment data, for example, for our PK2 schools because it starts in grade 3. But one of the things that we are interested in doing is looking at for a way to incorporate those schools into the accountability system. The schools that are not included are they're not all PK2 schools. We do have some schools, very tiny schools, that just don't have enough data to be able to be included that are not just PK2. But we're actively working towards thinking about how we can include all schools in the system regardless of whether they have assessment data or not.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Rob and Commissioner.
Thank you.
You'll get back to us on next steps next month?
Yes, Board Chair, like I said, everybody, think of this as the beginning of the conversation, nowhere near the end. And like I said, what I really want to bring is, just again, evidence of practices that are working across our Commonwealth, because we have them. And of course, more importantly, to share those across our districts, our different, school organizations across the Commonwealth, because we know that, our superintendents, they're gonna, again, they want to see what strategies are working, and we'll be able to show it to them.
Great, thank you. Little break? I think we're going to take a 5-minute break at the request of some members. Thank you. Get him back in. I know.
I also really want her dress, and I'm trying to figure out. I really want her dress.
Oh, yeah, it's so cute.
Okay. Getting us back into session. I've lost some members.
But we've lost the crowd. We've lost no more,
Secretary's there.
breaks for us.
Challenge for the break.
Yeah.
I said it.
Marianne, Marianne,
And
I
if I
think I
would have
lost
gotten
her.
a cookie.
She said she had to leave.
Yes, I think I did lose her. Isabella? Okay, thank you, everybody, for indulging us in the small break. I'm going to move on to agenda item 4 and pass it over to Commissioner Martinez on the amendments to the regional school district regulations.
Thank you, Chairwoman. So I want to invite Jay Sullivan, our Associate Commissioner for District and School Finance, Christine Lynch, former Director of Regional Governance, Michelle Griffin, who's the Regional Governance Coordinator, and Lucy Wall from our legal staff. Board members, just as a reminder, in April 2025, the board voted to release and solicit public comments on proposed amendments to the regulations on regional school districts. The department invited public comment to the proposed regulatory changes and extended the public comment period to June 28, 2025. Based on the comments that we received, I'm recommending several additional changes to the regulations. In addition, we made a few editorial changes for consistency and clarity. I recommend that the board vote today to adopt the amendments to the regulations. By the way, even if you vote for these, we'll always address concerns, board members. Just know that the work is never ending. My colleagues and I will now run through a summary of the public comment and outreach as well as the proposed changes. And I think we'll start with Jay.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Again, I guess the first thing I'd like to say about these changes in the regulations is that they were more mechanical and technical, nothing controversial, to be quite honest with you, and making people understand the changes was pretty straightforward. And we only received 6 comments coming in. So Michelle Griffin, coordinator, is going to go through those comments with you, just to let you know and see if you folks have any questions about any of the changes. But again, more technical in nature, nothing controversial, as I said. And as I said, very few comments. So without further ado, is Michelle Griffin.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you to the board members. Excuse me. Wise man recently said brevity is a virtue, so if you'd like, I can forego our presentation and just respond to any questions you may have. You've had all the materials, but it's really up to you, members, and Chair Craven.
I think that we have a lot of new members, so if the new members want to hear the presentation, but I think this was pretty self-explanatory, that it was technical amendments and even, okay, I'm saying, we might as well go through it.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So as you'll recall, I'll still try to be brief, I promise. As you'll recall, our proposed changes were presented to you initially in April. We've provided you with a summary of our public outreach and our public comment. We're going to go through the additional proposed changes and then take any of your comments and questions. So by way of background, these slides will look familiar to those of you who are here in April, but we provide them just by way of reminder and for context. There are, this year, 84 regional school districts in Massachusetts, 58 we call academic, although certainly the academic regional school districts offer vocational programs, and 26 are career tech vocational regional school districts, although they as well certainly offer academic programs. We just do that to sort of divide them up a little bit. And only 54 municipalities in the state are not in a regional school district. The next 2 slides really show you the breadth. Oh, good. Well, if you want, I can send you the link, because in order to get it on one slide, we couldn't show all the names of the regional school districts. But if you zoom in and zoom out, you can see all the names. So the gold and the purple on the map represent regional school districts that are pre-K through 12 and, I'm sorry, excuse me, the gold are pre-K through 12. The purple are partial regional school districts. Most of those are 9 through 12 or 7 through 12, and we have a handful that are just elementary districts, such as Farmington River, which was just noticed in the last presentation. And this shows our vocational districts. So as you can see, we have regional school districts across the state. So in our work, through our work with regional school districts, with their school committee members, their superintendents and school business officials, with the associations with whom we work, such as MASC and MARS, we saw a need to make some changes to the regional school districts in order to just accomplish a few things. One was streamlining the approval of regional school district agreements and amendments to regional school district agreements, clarifying provisions surrounding budget, clarifying provisions related to the commissioner's fiscal oversight when that's required by regional school district law. And just by way of reminder, that's only required when it's either required by statute, which has only been in a couple of circumstances in districts that got into financial trouble, or it's required when at June 30th of a fiscal year, a regional school district does not have a budget for the July 1 of the next fiscal year. We have to get involved and set a budget while the towns that are members, or towns and cities that are members of that district, continue to work towards an approved budget.
Yeah, we don't have shutdowns.
Right. We've added a few provisions, waiver and severability, and we've added some technical updates. So after we met with you, you'll recall you extended the public comment period by a couple of weeks, I believe, when we met in April. We had sufficient time so that we could meet with our associations prior to the close of public comment. We offered to meet with our 5 partner agencies, Mass Association of Regional Schools, MASBO, MASC, MASS, and MAVA. The 3 listed agencies took us up on it, and we met with them, held sessions, answered questions. We explained the rationale behind our changes, and those were, I think, pretty successful sessions that we held. Following that, we received public comments from a total of 6 individuals. As Jay said, only 6. I won't go through the identification, but as you can see, it was a limited number of public comments. Included in the public comment were only a couple of similar concerns, and those were in the following areas. There's concern about the language clarifying whether local votes, that is municipalities, needed to vote on a regional school district reorganization, specifically withdrawal of a member town from a regional school district. There were some questions about the votes related to the alternative assessment method. You'll recall that regional school districts have 2 different assessment methods that may be used to assess their member towns. One is by statute, and one is an alternative assessment that must be set forth in their regional agreement. So there were concerns about that. And then there were some concerns about the applicability and the intention of the waiver provision. And I'll get into that in just a minute. So in response to the public comment, we agreed with the comment about the lack of clarity concerning whether member towns and cities had to vote on a reorganization from a school district, or of a school district. So we did make changes to the applicable regulations to clarify that not only must the commissioner approve a reorganization, but the member towns have to approve it. So we added to those sections regarding withdrawal, admission, addition or deletion of grades. We added to those sections that local votes are required for all of those. And in looking at this, unfortunately, we did see that we needed a few editorial changes that we didn't catch the first time around in April, so we did change, for example, his and her to commissioner in a few places. We recognized that we had some inconsistent language. In some places, we called it a regional school committee budget. In some places, we called it a regional school district budget. So we just made some changes, those kind of consistencies. Where we didn't make changes were, where there were common comments, were regarding the alternative assessment comments and the waiver comments. The alternative assessment comments, in one case, there were changes requested to the statute, which, as you know, we don't have the authority to make. In other cases, there were some changes requested that we don't believe are required by law. And in other cases, we thought there might be some misinterpretations of current and proposed regulation. With respect to waiver, there was a request for some additional stipulations to be placed on the ability of local officials to request a waiver. And there was concern, as was expressed this morning, regarding a member municipality being able to request a waiver, and that might take authority away from a regional school committee and provide more flexibility to member municipalities. Other individual comments were kind of just one-offs, and those are listed at the end of in the appendix. But I want to address the waiver comments in particular. You heard about that a little bit this morning. So we did explain this, but I kind of want to go into a little more detail about why we added a waiver provision. We found that in several situations with regional school districts, a waiver was sought, and we did not, unlike the other school governance regulations, we did not have a waiver provision in the regional school district regulations. The charter school regulations, the virtual school regulations, the collaborative regulations all had a waiver provision. We did not. The particular cases included, in one case, there was a complex merger being proposed of two regional school districts. Because it was a complicated proposal, these two regional school districts wanted to have an extended transition period to go from two regional districts to the one district. We have a transition period outlined in regulation, and because we had no waiver period, those two school districts, or that regional school district planning board actually, was going to have to file special legislation just to extend our transition period, so they'd have a little more time to complete what is really a complex reorganization proposal. As it turned out, the reorganization in that case did not happen, but we expect, as you know, declining enrollments and things of this nature, as things change in the Commonwealth, we expect that we may receive, and we have actually received at least one more proposal to merge regional school districts. So we don't want districts in those circumstances, or regional school district planning boards in that circumstance, to be hindered by our regulations. In another case, we had a district that needed or requested a waiver of one of our regulations, which we've actually changed, but we had a regulation that required a majority vote to propose an initial budget to the member communities of a regional school district before they voted on the final vote. We just had a straight majority requirement. A two-town district wanted each member town to have one school committee member vote on that majority, and because in this case, I believe the school committee members from one town were worried about being outnumbered in terms of getting a budget proposed initially to the communities. We could not waive our majority provision and honor the request of the two-town district to have one school committee member from each member town vote in favor of the budget before it went out to the public. So those are kind of the examples that led to this. As you saw, the proposed waiver language is strong. It requires that somebody make a written request. It requires a regional school committee by its superintendent, or a planning board, regional school district planning board, or a member town by its chief executive officer has to make a written request to the commissioner, and that the commissioner has discretion to grant those waivers only in extraordinary circumstances and to the extent allowed by law. So we felt comfortable with the language that we proposed. We felt comfortable that municipalities were allowed to request waivers simply because in the case that I gave a few minutes ago regarding the regional school district planning boards that were attempting to merge regional districts, the planning board is made up of member municipalities. If they had to request a waiver, it would have had to come from the member municipality, not from the regional school committee, for example. So we felt comfortable leaving the waiver language as it was. I hope that's helpful. So I don't know if my colleagues wanted to add anything to our brief presentation, but we're available here if you have comments or questions, and happy to answer.
Just one comment. I mean, I'm not sure that whether I would agree with each of what you wanted to do, things you want to do if you had waiver authority, and I'm not sure if I'll agree with everything you do going forward. It strikes me entirely reasonable that as, you know, kind of management, or in this case, the oversight body, there be some flexibility with parameters around it. So I'm less, the examples are interesting. I'm less concerned about whether I agree or disagree than with the concept, should you have some waiver flexibility? And my own view is yes. So just throw that out. Yes, you should, I'm saying. I'm agreeing with you.
Great, thank you.
I just wanted to thank the team for, this was a very contentious conversation with a request for additional time for engagement. And so just thanking the team for the engagement, and then very transparent summary of what was heard, what was agreed to, et cetera, et cetera. Just thank you for that process.
Well, we were also the victims of timing because the other vocational regulations were happening at the same
Yeah.
time.
I know.
And they had a little bit more controversy with
Oh,
them.
we know,
So-
yeah.
We remember.
But I think that on both sides, I appreciate just the transparency of this is why we made a change, this is why we did not, this is where it can be found.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Only that I've worked closely with Michelle and Christine before in my previous role, and they've done a really great job. And I appreciate the addition of making sure that all towns need to approve a reorganization. Thank you.
Great. Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, the ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our last agenda item is the Felix Commonwealth Virtual School, adjustment of conditions on certificate. Commissioner Martinez?
I invite to the table again, Rob Curtin, our Chief Officer of Data Assessment and Accountability, and Allison Bagg, our Associate Commissioner. So next, board members, we're going to be discussing my recommendation for the Felix Commonwealth Virtual School. So in March of 2024, so a little bit of history, the board granted a certificate to Felix Commonwealth Virtual School subject to meeting certain conditions. Felix has not yet opened, but has made progress on those conditions, and the school is asked to extend its existing certificate, so it's not a new certificate, which will expire soon. I would like to support the extension, but first I would like the board to approve the new due dates of the conditions and to ensure Felix has a strong plan to open the fall of 2026. So these are conditions, again, that the board already have put before. I will ask for some grace in terms of asking for an additional condition. Those of us who've been district leaders and, know how important it is to have a strong governing board. So just to ensure that the Felix board members have the training to provide a strong governance and to maintain capacity. These conditions and the opening procedure process are overseen by our department staff, and we'll be ensuring to make sure that the school is ready for the date that they have set to serve, that they're asking for to serve students. So my staff are here to answer any questions, but that's where we're at, board members.
Any questions? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the extension?
Oh, that was fast.
Make a motion.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
Sorry, this is just a very,
Oh,
I support it, and also I hope that this is the last time we'll be asked to entertain this. Sorry.
and I also think that we had at one point in the past, we were asked they had wanted to withdraw. And I had actually actively thought that we would be much lesser if we let them withdraw. So I've been trying to keep this alive with the folks that are trying to keep the board going. So it's just because we haven't seen anything like this. There's nothing else like this model. So I'm supportive of keeping them going.
Those are
but
my feelings. I've said my
Okay.
piece.
I just, I think it'd be good to get a discussion of, especially for the newer board members, have Felix make the presentation that we heard. Now, it might be 2 years ago. There's been a lot that's changed in the world since then. But this also would fall under the category of innovation that I was hoping to engage board members on. So it's not just this routine extension of conditions and addition of conditions for folks.
Ella Gardner and I did the public hearing for that.
That's right.
Like January, almost 2 years ago. So this has
Yeah.
been going on a while. So, good.
All right.
Just to clarify, this vote is to approve their extension. It's not to approve their opening
Correct.
yet, correct?
That's right.
No.
Oh,
No, so board member, yeah, so let me, correct me if I'm wrong, staff. So board members, what you're approving is the conditions, because the certificate has already been approved. It's actually under my discretion to approve the extension. And what I share with the team is that, because again, I've opened quite a few new schools in my career. I know what it takes, and this will have, my name on it as commissioner, making sure that the conditions, really reaffirming that the conditions are going to be in place, and that's what I wanted the board to approve, so that again, the school is open and really truly ready to serve children. Because, like I said, everybody, I've opened enough new schools in my career. This is something I take very serious. So what you're voting for, board members, is the conditions, including the additional condition of the training for the board.
And so should they not meet one of these conditions
So I'll
in the
just,
allotted time frame? Because the reason I
Yeah.
paused is I'm like, they have a lot to get done before the end of the calendar year to position themselves for a strong opening next year.
So Member Grant and board members, I'm going to just say this. I will never allow something to open under my name that isn't ready to serve children. It is a serious, opening up a new school is a serious endeavor. And like I said, I've done it long enough in my career where I don't take it very lightly. So I will, the team will be monitoring the conditions, and that's why I said I have the authority to approve the extension without coming to the board. And I said I will not do that unless the conditions are reapproved by the board, including the new condition that I'm recommending, and then the staff will monitor. And the goal is to make sure that they're ready to serve children, because again, that is, the board, already approved the certificate. So that's not in debate. I just want to make sure that, that it truly is ready.
And just, maybe this isn't the right audience for this, but I know some school districts voted to cap how many students can enroll in virtual schools. So does that cap include the school if it opens?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Dory, we're at the point of a vote.
We had a motion and a
We had a motion and a second.
You said
All in
discussion,
favor?
So I discussed.
All in favor?
All good.
Aye.
Thank you, board
Opposed?
members.
Nay, thank
Well,
you.
thank you, Brian. Thank you for the clarity. I'm still new to remember, so.
Again, we'll get into this, I think, more along the lines of when it starts to open, but there was a discussion of tuition setting that went on for an extended period of time with the department, and that was sort of on us. So that's why I think they lost some of their board members as a result of the extension of that time, so. All right, thanks to everybody. The next board meeting will be Tuesday, October 28th. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for the record, at 11:58, 2 minutes before the 12 o'clock.